All right, thank you for listening to Remake Rewind, the podcast where we decide if remakes or reboots should have happened. I'm Mike, as always. With me, I've got Dustin. How are you doing, Dustin?
Hey, I'm doing great.
And David, a.k.a. Double D. How are you, bud?
Hey, Mike. I'm doing pretty good.
Hey, David.
Hey, Dustin.
So, to celebrate the Punisher TV show, we are doing something we haven't done before. We are going to be covering Punisher in media, but this will be the first TV show that we've covered in its entirety. We watched the entire season, or I guess first season of The Punisher. We watched the 1989 Dolph Lundgren version of The Punisher, which is an Australian movie. We watched the 2004 movie starring Thomas Jane and John Travolta. And we watched the 2008 reboot starring Ray Stevenson. And yeah, we watched
There's a whole lot of Punisher.
Yeah.
We watched 20 hours of
Pushed those
Punisher.
into 2 days. That was a lot of Punisher, man.
Yeah, see, I broke it up.
Did
over
you feel like you'd
2
been
weeks.
punished?
At points.
Well, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page that it is not vengeance.
It's not vengeance.
It's
It's
punishment.
punishment. The one thing I do got to say is for Double D and myself, we are in the busiest time of the year for our work. And between the horror and just hell at work these last 2 weeks and watching 20 hours of violence, I didn't kill anybody, so I think that maybe violence doesn't make people angry.
I think maybe you don't have the backbone it takes to do what needs to be done. I think you're a half measure. I think you're one bad day away from being me.
Oh.
I mean,
Oof.
I definitely saw a lot of shotguns to the face in the last couple of days.
Yeah,
I think what I will say right now, having watched all of this, is kudos to John Bernthal. He is the best Punisher on screen.
I agree. I think just like when we did the Judge Dredd, we decided that both movies kind of accurately did Judge Dredd in a different way. Like they both had their merits. And I do think that each of these 4 portrayals have their pros and cons, and they each have their merits. So I'm really excited to kind of just like dig in and just go. So how do you guys want to start? You want to start with the TV show, or you want to go chronologically?
Let's do chronologically. We'll go.
All right. So start with Dolph Lundgren.
Chrono.
So Dustin, do you have any IMDb stuff for this?
I can pull it up for us real quick here, but I would like to just say I think that the reason the biggest pro, I guess, for Dolph is the dude looks the part. The dude looks like the comic book come to life, right?
I think the 2 best looking ones are going to be Dolph and John Bernthal. But I went and looked at, Punisher comic books and stuff, and I saw 3 different artists that kind of looked like Dolph Lundgren. So yeah, I think you're definitely right. He definitely looks the part, and he's big and scary.
What's bizarre, though, is he looks the part without having the skull. Like, the icon is absent.
The skull.
Entirely, right? Like, he looks the part.
But he is the Punisher. He owns the role.
Well, I think it's the physique, dude. It comes down to the physique.
I think the other thing, and we'll get into it in a little bit, but just this movie starts with him being the Punisher for 5 years already. So he's already
he's been killing hella fools. Like, don't they say something like 125
They say something along
people?
the point like, what do you call 132 bodies? And he goes, a work in progress.
Yeah. All right, I got the storyline. Are you ready?
Was that pretty good?
That was actually pretty good.
That was good. Well, he sounds like he has a cold throughout the entire movie, mainly because he lives in the sewer, I guess, and he's fucking sick all the time.
He also, at a point, cauterizes a wound that he did not clean with a knife that he just put in the flame, and then he's in the sewer. So he's probably a little septic.
Yeah, well, I mean, and also, is he making these knives? Like,
he's got
whatever. Hang on, I got the storyline. All right. Based on the Marvel comic, Dolph Lundgren is Frank Castle, an ex-cop who lives in the sewers and acts as judge, jury, and executioner to the city's criminals in retaliation for the unpunished murders of his wife and kids. Frank's ex-partner, Jake, played by Louis Gossett Jr., finally catches up with the vigilante as he tries to stop the Japanese mob, which is trying to take over the city's mafia operation. That's pretty good. It's pretty accurate.
It's pretty succinct, pretty accurate, hit all the beats.
Yeah.
Good job.
So, what's cool, what I like about this I like that he lives in the sewers. I like that he's got an awesome motorcycle that seems to be able to take him anywhere in the city. Like,
it's perfect for the sewers.
Like, he's able to get any, as long as the building he's going to has really pipes of any kind, he's able to materialize there in moments, which is pretty useful. I mean, if this is supposed to be New York City, I do fear for whatever Ninja Turtles happen to live in these
definitely fought alligators down there too.
So yeah, this is supposed to take place in New York City, but it was filmed entirely in Australia. When they did like that scene in Coney Island, they had to like make a fake one, like a fake Coney Island like booth outside of the Sydney Opera House. This movie never made it to theaters. It went to like VHS, and that's the first time that people in America saw it. And it didn't have a strong start here. Like people were really upset that he didn't have that iconic skull. But he did have skull knives, which were
awesome.
He did.
Which were
He
really
was really
cool.
good at throwing those things.
He was great at throwing them. He was probably great at making them. I feel like they have to be custom made.
In the sewer.
In the sewer. But no. So what I did like about it, which, it seems a little strange, I guess, but I feel like this iteration of Frank Castle was the most, from the movies at least, psychologically disturbed.
No, I would from the movies.
From the movies,
I would agree
from
with
the
that.
movies,
Yeah,
not from the show.
I'd agree
like,
with that.
From the movies, he's sitting there like naked in the sewer, asking God if he is the vengeance that is supposed to be loosed upon the world.
Yeah, he's sitting naked, praying, glistening.
Yeah,
and he's
looking amazing.
Looking fantastic. No, like in that last scene, it closes with like a weird like zoom shot through all the tunnels, almost like Evil Dead style through the forest, and then you just hear him like, "I still talk to God. I need to believe that what I'm doing is right, and I'm asking for permission.
Yeah,
the guilty must be punished." And that's just the end.
He is a mess of a human being.
Yeah, out of the movies, he's definitely the most disturbed, portrayed, I guess.
Yeah, and like that's the Punisher, dude. Like, at least to me, and what I accepted from the comics that I read when I was younger, was like the Punisher should not be like Batman with guns, or like he's crazy. He's a damaged human.
Well, the other thing that's interesting about this portrayal is this is the only one that's really heroic. The other ones are just, the Thomas Jane one we'll get into, it's strictly a revenge story. Even though he says it isn't, it is. This one, he's going and doing his revenge, and he's going and killing all these different mafia people, but he goes out of his way to save the children of the mob.
He didn't want to at first.
Well, he didn't want to, but he realized it was the right thing to do, that they were technically innocent.
He realized it was kind of his fault.
Yeah, and so that's what it is. So he's got this like crony guy who's like used to be an actor, but now he's like
a hobo.
And he's like, the reason that this happened was that you killed so many mobsters that the mob is so weak that the Yakuza was able to come here and basically take them out. So this is your fault. So you need to fucking fix this, brah. And yeah, it makes sense, brah. But I honestly like the main thing that I had an issue with this movie is I would say it's the Punisher in name only, because even though they called him the Punisher, this really could have been any just like cop for revenge. It could have just been, they could have taken away his revenge story, and it could have been, he did the same amount of mayhem as Riggs and Murtaugh in Lethal Weapon, the same kind of damage that Arnold Schwarzenegger would do in Commando. Like, it was very much a generic 80s movie, and they could have just dropped like any cop in there. It didn't even have to be a revenge story. Like, they were definitely.
So what you're saying is it could have been Bruce Willis.
It could have been, it could have been a Die Hard movie. Like, Bruce Willis
if they
did
ever
just
got
as much
Bruce
stuff
to be a Punisher, fuck.
Well, there kind of are. There's a movie, the remake of Death Wish is coming out like this month, and it's basically a revenge Punisher style story with Bruce Willis. So kind of. But yeah, this one could have really just been a generic 80s action movie. It could have been an Arnold Schwarzenegger. It could have been a Stallone as just a cop doing their job.
I guess for me, like, because I'm a little bit older, like, this was that. But
yeah, that's what
awesome.
I'm saying. It was a fun movie. Like, I actually really liked like the opening scene.
It's an 80s movie through and through. It feels like a video game.
It totally is.
It does. Well, the music definitely was like 8-bit, like
oh, the music rips, dude.
All the ninja fights.
Yeah, all the enemies are ninjas.
Like ninjas on slides.
That first
Or they
scene
like
when
bust
he goes
in that room and gun down a bunch of dumb ninjas.
there are some pretty good, legitimately good action scenes for like the 80s. Like now, of course, 80s action fights and early 90s were just, brawls. And now we've gotten to the point where, they're a little bit more sophisticated. But like the beginning scene when he's in that mansion and he's finally going after the person who actually is responsible for killing his family, he like sneaks into the house and like stabs
through,
one
like,
guy,
the vents
drops
and
a rope
stuff.
down, and pulls a guy up and hangs him. Solid snaking some like fucking mafia guys. Like it was cool, and like it really is what Punisher is. Like the Punisher goes into these situations without a plan, not really caring if he's gonna live or die. He's just
he goes in
enacting
to
his vengeance.
exterminate them with extreme prejudice.
Yeah. What's funny is in that first scene, he kills a bunch of dudes, right? And then like all the news reporters are like already there. The house explodes, and then you just see like the mob guy get thrown out. You see him briefly. He walks back in, and then the house explodes a second time.
As he walks back in.
As he walks back in.
What's cool about like the Frank Castle character is like the Punisher and Frank Castle, like to the media, are one and the same. He's not concealing his identity
No,
from
he's
anyone,
not.
ever. And that's what makes the Punisher kind of cool. Like, this is one man on a mission to murder.
And so one man war on crime.
Yeah, like he doesn't care. Like his name is out there, and that does not bother him one bit. Like I feel like, like the best iterations of the Punisher, and almost like I guess that's why the Bernthal one is better. Is like the media ascribes the name the Punisher to him. He's Frank. He's Frank Castle, like and he's got no
he adopts
problem.
it after the media.
Doesn't wear a mask, doesn't do anything. Like he's out there to kill people who have done wrong, and like that is what that character is. Whether or not you like the character has no bearing on what that character is.
Yeah, absolutely. So since we got a lot to cover, I think we should each just say something we like about this movie, and then maybe move on to the next one. I really liked this line when the Yakuza, first comes up and they're like, why should we like respect you? And she goes, when your ancestors were shepherds still screwing sheep on the Mediterranean coast, ours were the crime lords of Asia. I was like, Jesus Christ.
I like Dolph's leather pants.
They looked great.
I really like that he rode through the sewers on his motorcycle all the time.
Yeah, through and through, this movie was just really a generic 80s movie. It rips, like it's a quick, like 90 minutes.
It's 90 minutes, the perfect length for this kind of movie.
Yeah, so it goes through.
Louis Gossett Jr. is great in this movie.
Yeah. He,
let me in, Frank! Let me in! You gotta let me in!
His character's very similar to one in the Warzone. One of the other characters in the Warzone one with Ray Stevenson.
Yeah.
All in all, like I said, this movie to me, like, I actually own all 3 Punisher movies, including this one. I've only seen this one once before, and I hated it the first time. This time around, I was pleasantly surprised. But it really is Punisher in name only. It could have just been generic cop, So that's the only issue I really have with the movie.
For me, this one was like the Punisher movie that I watched when I was little. And I felt like because we were doing the Punisher, it was a good excuse to watch it again. Because it had literally been probably 20 years since I had seen this movie. And I watched it again, and I think I liked it more.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you got that experience, bud.
You're welcome.
So let's move into the 2004 Thomas Jane one. I loved this movie when so I worked at the movie theater when this came out. I saw it all the time. After watching this movie, I got really into the character. Like I bought the soundtrack to this movie. I got like a Punisher belt buckle. I started reading like the Garth Ennis stories.
Started punishing people.
I started poning people. I literally loved this movie. There was a video game that came out shortly after that Thomas Jane did the voice of, and it's legitimately still a fun game. I played it about a year ago, so this movie got me really into the character, and I really, really loved the movie. I recognize that it's cheesy, and Thomas Jane's not a very good actor, so during the last week and a half while watching all this Punisher stuff, Katrina really wanted to watch like a scary movie. And I had a friend talk about The Mist. I was like, oh, let's watch The Mist. And he's the lead in that movie, too. And he overacts the hell out of that movie and this movie. So, and a lot of people loved Thomas Jane. Like, people petitioned for him to get the role when Marvel got the rights to the Punisher back. And people really didn't like the Ray Stevenson one initially because people loved Thomas Jane so much, but in retrospect, I'm kind of like, eh.
I agree with you. I mean, I was 15 when this one came out in theaters.
Nah, you would have had to been like 13 because I was 15. I worked at it was like the first year when I worked at the theater. 2004.
2004? Yeah, I was born in 89, man. I was 15. Come on.
You're a liar.
Anyway, I enjoyed it when I was a teenager, and but no, watching it again, it was a drag. Like everything about it was like slow and not punishy.
Like there's certain things that are great, like the Dustin, you got an IMDb thing yet?
Well, I felt like I'll pull up an IMDb right now, but I felt like I had read the Garth Ennis Punisher run that kind of inspired this movie, so I was let down a little bit as well.
Yeah, there's certain things that they take directly from the comics. Like this movie's weird because it takes a lot from the comic books, but then also tries to be realistic, and it toes the line in weird ways where it's like either go comic booky or go Dark Knight. Well, this was pre-Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Be serious and surreal and be in the real world, and like it kind of chose to do neither and chose to do both at the same time. So nobody really got what they wanted.
The storyline for this movie goes, Special Agent Frank Castle had it all, a loving family, a great life, and an adventurous job. But when his life is taken away from him by a ruthless criminal and his associates, Frank has become reborn. Now, serving as judge, jury, and executioner, he's a new kind of vigilante out to wage a one-man war against those who have done him wrong.
Yeah,
which is pretty accurate, but, like, I don't know, like, the comics made it make a lot more sense. Like, so in this movie, he moves into that apartment building and has this weird kind of, like, surrogate family, right? With, like, Spacker Dave and the Rebecca Romaine Stamos.
Mousy Jane.
Yeah, like, in the comics, he's, like, the weird dude. Like, it's like living next door to the Punisher. It's a lot scary.
No,
for them.
I read this run too, and it's like they're kind of there, and they're afraid of him. Like he comes home covered in blood, and they're like, what does this guy do? Like they don't actually know he's the Punisher initially, even in the comic books. Yeah. And so they're always just like, who is this guy? And they don't want to interact with him because they're like, he's gonna kill us if we go and talk to him. And then eventually, they kind of break him down, and like. I know.
At one point, I remember they didn't want to go knock on his door, and like I forget which character was like, I don't know, I didn't want to go knock on the door because I didn't know if you were like punishing somebody in there.
Yeah. So the thing that's weird about this movie is they took it from New York and put it in Florida, and the Punisher, and it works. There's crime in Miami, but the Punisher is like the mafia, and this is more like it's still crime and gangs and stuff, but it's not his normal element. And the big problem that I had this time around with this movie is it's the origin story of the Punisher.
Yeah.
And the reason the Punisher's so crazy is he witnessed his family get murdered. And now the murdering of his family in this movie is like way more intense than it is in the comic books and other versions, because it's not just his wife and kids, it's his entire extended family and his wife's extended family in their Puerto Rican vacation home. But they set it up that he hasn't been that great of a father because he's been undercover for at least 2 years. So he hasn't really seen his family. His family's been moving around. His son's kind of like, man, Dad, you're kind of a dick. I never see you. And then he shows up and they're having like vacations. So he hasn't really been that family man. So it's a little weird when you're like, oh, this makes him completely break his psyche and basically become a non-human, like sociopath. Yeah. I wish that they spent a little bit more time showing them like to be the family man kind of thing, because it's not believable that he went this far to an extreme.
And I felt like this movie glosses over his military service, right? Like he's an FBI agent. He's not a Marine.
And they talk about it when like they've got like the little dossier on him, like, oh yeah, he did a couple tours in Iraq. And it's like doing a couple tours in Iraq is not going to be enough for you to be able to single-handedly take down the mob.
Badass.
He's supposed to be special forces and recon and everything, and you don't get that. There are other things that I love about this movie, though, like getting the Kevin Nash to play the Russian. That was a fantastic fight scene.
Yes.
Like, still to this day, I think is one of the best comic book action scenes, hands down. then you also get like his car.
I couldn't get over his Waldo shirt though.
Well, that's what the Russian wears in the comic book.
I know. It's just I know it goes back to what you were saying about towing the line between comics and reality, right? But I mean, I don't know. I just couldn't get past it.
Yeah, it's kind of goofy.
I just felt like it was the
fantastic.
movie as a whole was very slow paced.
It was because this Punisher wasn't one of the Punisher to me is somebody who knows that a crime family is going to be in a particular spot, and he just goes and grabs as many guns as he can carry, and he walks in and systematically kills people. He doesn't walk in with this long plan. He's just going in and he's going to do as much damage as he can. This one, in one way, it's interesting because it's like a psychological thing, but he starts off like trying to fundamentally destroy the bad guy, John Travolta's family and his business. So he like gets his wife a parking ticket by taking a fire hydrant and moving it, stuff like that. And then he's also blackmailing his best friend / like head of security and stuff like that. So he's playing these long con mind games, and that's really not what the Punisher was. And when this movie first came out, I really liked him. Like, oh, that's really cool, an interesting way to get it. But that's not what the Punisher is.
No, he's a Punisher.
He's gonna go in there, guns blazing, and murder everyone.
And there's a lot of things in this movie that are very plot driven, like, oh, we need to make the plot happen. So, you know, that scene where they're like taking out his family, and him and Roy Scheider are like taking on a bunch of the criminals, like that's a fantastic scene too. And like I felt emotional with like the loss of the family, but it's like I felt more invested. To me, I felt like I was more invested in the family than he was, and that's weird, but that was really cool. But it's just like they go and shoot him in the chest, they shoot him in the leg, and then they like do the little like ceremony where they put him on the dock, they cover him gasoline, light it, and he goes flying. But they shoot him in the chest. Why would you not shoot him in the head? Like, you're just asking for this guy not to die. And then they do it again later. Like the bad guys do a bunch of half measures instead of just making sure this guy's dead, just so we can have a movie. It was a little weird, but there's some good one-liners. But yeah, anything else you guys want to talk about on this one?
Not really.
There's a few little things that are kind of dumb that, like, as a kid I liked, but at the end, like, he sets off that chain reaction of explosions in a parking lot, and it looks like a skull.
The skull.
Yeah,
that's a little dumb.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I thought John Travolta was fantastic in this movie, though. I thought he was really fun. He got his wig game was on point.
He was just kind of silly. I don't know.
That's John Travolta,
honestly,
though.
I didn't really enjoy this movie that much.
I didn't enjoy it as much as I watch this movie every year. Like, I still like this movie a lot, but, you know, watching this critically for a podcast, I did not enjoy it as much. Like, there's still some good one-liners, like, and there's a few good characters, like Quentin, the head of security dude. I thought he was a really cool character. I actually liked the, like, Mrs. Saint, and I liked Mickey, the guy who's kind of the informant for Frank, who's, like, helping him out, take down these guys. I thought there were some interesting concepts and some interesting characters. But yeah, just on the whole, I don't think it was executed 100%. Like, there were still some great scenes, like him going through the nightclub at the end was a really cool scene as well. Yeah. It's just not enough. Like you said, it was slow. Like, it is a slow movie. Like,
I just felt like of all of the Punishers that I watched, John Wick would have the least problem with Thomas Jane.
Oh, definitely.
I like his skull the best, though. The Punisher skull. I do think that's the best design for his like little logo.
Sure.
But
But John Wick would still whip his ass.
Right?
Yeah, John Wick would whip his ass.
And he wouldn't make such a big fucking deal about it. Like, it wouldn't be this whole big thing like, oh, I gotta move into this apartment building with all these other people. Like, no, John Wick would just fucking dig up his shit out of his garage and go fucking kill all these people.
Yeah, it's just weird that he played such a long con kind of thing instead of, and he makes a point like 2 to 3 different times in this movie. He makes a point of saying this isn't revenge. It's not a proper motive. This is punishment.
Oh yeah,
it's straight revenge.
No,
he doesn't go after anybody other than the people directly responsible for the murder of his family.
Yeah, I guess just to me, like as far as picking on this John Wick thing is like, I think until we got to Bernthal, like John Wick was the Punisher of our generation. Yeah, it's a very similar story. It's a very similar. Like they killed his wife, they killed his puppy, and stole his car. And
the only difference was he was in the mob,
but he's just better at killing people.
Yeah,
he's super good at it. Like if you were to pit that, like let's be honest, okay. if you were to pit Thomas Jane Punisher versus, Keanu John Wick, who's coming out alive? My money's on John Wick.
Very short movie.
My money's on John Wick.
It's a very short movie.
Absolutely.
It's a very
This
short
Punisher
movie,
gets his
resulting
ass
in
kicked
Thomas
several
Jane's
times.
ass getting whipped.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this Punisher doesn't really... So, in the beginning scene, when his family's getting murdered, he struggles fighting like one or two guys at a time. The only time he does really well against those people is when he shows up at the nightclub, and he's got complete...
Dude, if John Travolta could have
surprise.
picked up the phone and called John Wick to kill the Punisher, the
John
movie
Wick
would have
would
been
win.
over.
Yeah, John Wick would win.
Done. Wrap.
So, going into Warzone. Warzone is another weird one. Like
It's really weird.
I saw this in theaters.
This movie was super
I
weird.
hated it the first time I saw it. Like the first time I watched it, there's elements of it that are fantastic, and there are other elements that are really bad. Like visually, I think out of the first three movies, or like I think visually this one's the most interesting. It's beautifully shot. It's composite really good. The composition's good. Like everything is staged really well. Like it looks fantastic. The problem with this movie is the dialogue. Like, I remember watching this movie in theaters going, every once in a while you'd start, like, watching it and, 10, 15 minutes would go by and you're like, oh, you know what, this movie's not so bad. And then there'd be, like, a really, really cheesy line of dialogue. And it just ripped me out of the movie so many times because the dialogue was so clunky and bad in this movie.
The dialogue was weird. That guy from The Wire, McNulty, whatever, I don't know his real name. But the bad guy, Jigsaw, is what he calls himself.
Dominic West.
Billy the Beauty.
Yeah, like he was like a lot more to me like a Batman villain than a Punisher villain, which was a little bit strange.
So I have a little bit more respect for this movie now than I did when I initially watched it, because Lexi Alexander has been the director of this movie, who's actually an Oscar-winning director who directed this movie.
What did he get an Oscar for? This for Punisher Warzone? What did she get it for? Punisher Warzone.
She got it for a short film that she
Punisher.
did like 5 years prior to this movie.
It was not for Punisher.
No, it was not for the Punisher.
Oh.
It was prior to the Punisher that she got her Academy Award. She kind of, the way that they kind of blindsided her on this movie, and they kind of didn't treat her correctly, so she wanted to cast different people and they like overrode her on casting, and then they pushed the release date to December, which is not a time where these kind of movies tend to do well, at least not back then.
It's a summer movie for sure.
Yeah, so originally it was supposed to come out in August and be the end of a summer movie, and they were gonna initially she was like, oh, we're gonna advertise this as like a comic book movie, and then they decided to push it to December and had it premiere in New York, and had a showing specifically for like critics, and she was like, wait a second, New York critics aren't the people who are like we should be debuting this movie to. Los Angeles maybe, but not New York. So she wanted to like have like a 1-page sheet with like screenshots of comic books showing like where she got some of the scenes from, and Lionsgate refused to do that. So this movie, like, her career got like ruined by this movie because people were like, she's terrible, it's torture porn and graphic, and she's like a sicko, even though she took all the major action beats like scene for scene from the comic books. Like, she set out, like, when they slashed her budget, she was like, I'm just gonna make this like a B movie on purpose. So when I found out that she made the movie to be super corny and over the top, like, she set it out to be comically over the top. And that I have a little bit more respect for the movie when I found out it was kind of done on purpose.
I guess I do and I don't. I mean, a lot of it. So that reminds me, there's a Calvin and Hobbes comic. I'm sure everyone's familiar with Calvin and Hobbes, right? And there's one of the comic strips where he's literally reading a comic book, and it goes, there's a character, the comic book is largely making light of like this like dark 80s period in comics, right? Where everybody was dark and gritty, like Frank Miller was at his heyday and stuff. And it's like, there's like a Batman-esque character illustrated by Bill Watterson who's like fighting this woman who like, he's like fighting her, and then she ends up like grabbing like some kind of, future gun and shoots him. He's like, oh my God, I can feel it like in my spine, like tearing my, insides apart. And like Calvin is like visibly shaken by reading this comic book, right? So he gets up out of his bed, he puts the comic book down, he goes to turn on the television, where his mother then tells him, like, "Oh, I don't want you watching all the violence on TV." You know, and that's the joke. That's the thing. And like Bill Watterson being an amazing illustrator, like those comic book panels look like 80s comic book panels until it flashes back to the reality that is a Calvin and Hobbes panel. And, you know, so on the one hand, I get what you're saying, but on the other hand, it's like, as the creator, like, have some sense, you know? Like, I don't know. You can't hide behind that. When you're the creator, you can't hide behind it. Like, again, that's why I think the Bernthal one is better. It's a very realistic approach. It's almost, I think the Bernthal Punisher is the most like the Nolan Batman.
Right.
So if this character were to exist, this is the way it should be portrayed.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing is, so when she got this movie, Lionsgate was like, we want to make a very comic book movie. So she went to like Comic-Con conventions and she went to chat rooms and like found out what people want. So she made this movie for like, quote unquote, for the fans. And right before they were going to release it, they Lionsgate fired her composer. So she wanted to have like a synth 80s kind of like music and make it match the tone of the movie, but they went through and you'll notice there's like a weird kind of dark orchestra music because this movie came out the same year as Dark Knight, so they course corrected and they wanted to make it like the Dark Knight well after the movie has already been completed, just by changing the music
of the movie.
Bad decision.
Yeah, so that the thing is, like, the tone of this movie is different. Like, you can tell they tried to change it a little bit too late, and that's, you know, I feel like this movie was a product of studio interference, and luckily we're getting to a point where, you know, like Marvel with like Taika Waititi and Thor being able to have like free reign, and you know Rian Johnson being able to have free reign in Star Wars. Like, we're getting to a point where studios are starting to take chances. Like, maybe we should trust these like obscure directors, Edgar Wright being able to do whatever he wants. This wasn't a time, like, back then you couldn't do that. Like, Christopher Nolan's really the only person who's been, like, given free reign on a comic book movie.
Well, he was just trusted
now.
with it, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, knowing a little bit more about the backstory of this movie, it was also only filmed in 40 days, which is an insane pace for a movie like this.
Yeah.
But we're talking more about the background. Let's talk about the movie, I'd say. Like, what did you guys think about Ray Stevenson's Punisher?
I mean, I liked his action of it. I feel like they tried to touch on his like PTSD portion, but they didn't do it correctly.
They didn't do it well. He also didn't speak for the first 25 minutes of this movie.
He did hang from a chandelier and shoot.
He did. So that's one thing that's interesting about this movie. Like, that opening scene really is what like a finale would be in a lot of other action movies. So it starts off just like it rips at the beginning, but then there's nothing for like 40 minutes. Like, there's a few little minor scuffles. And then you have the finale, which is pretty solid, but it's kind of it definitely drags in the middle.
I felt like his main hang up. So after he raids that one like recycling facility and shoots that FBI guy for coming out of the room, the Homeland Security guy. I mean, he's way too broke up about that.
Yeah, I didn't feel like that was right. Like, first off, like, how would you react in that situation? Like, there's no way you can know that this guy's undercover.
The guy's way undercover. You shot him, but you're also there to kill all of the people there.
Right. Well, and the other thing is, it's like, it's not like he's going through and doing recon ahead of time and finding out everything.
Also, he was pulling a gun on him.
Yeah, he was. And the other thing is, I mean,
because he's supposed to let that guy shoot him. Like, I just didn't get his guilt over that.
Yeah,
like,
it didn't make any sense. And that's where I think a lot of people had a problem with this movie is as soon as you put doubt into what the Punisher is doing, you fundamentally break that character because
he has no doubt.
So sure of what he's doing. Like, yeah, do I think he would be hung up on it if he found out after the fact? Yes, but I don't think he would quit punishing because of it.
I don't think he would. I think he would realize as a soldier there's collateral damage.
I think he'd be like broken up a little bit in terms of like, man, I killed a good man. I wish I didn't do that. I'm gonna have to be more.
I mean, I think he would
time.
go try to like leave the wife the money and be like, I think he would just leave it at her house and walk away.
Yeah, I don't think he'd say anything.
I don't think he'd even talk to her. I think it was just like, cool, here's a bunch of money. Sorry about, like, it'd be the same thing that, like, war widows get. Here's a letter. Your husband was a brave person, whatever, goodbye, forever. Like, he wouldn't think twice about it, and he would continue on his mission to obliterate the mob.
Right. And, yeah, absolutely.
Instead,
so, like,
the whole movie is, like, reframed around him redeeming himself and taking care of her and her child and, like, all of that
and
shit.
The thing that's weird about this movie is the action, while it's like insanely over the top, it's really inconsistent. At the beginning of the movie, like I'm just gonna like highlight all the action beats real quick. Beginning of the movie, he like cuts the power to like a mob house, and he like turns off the lights. He goes in, he turns on a flare, and like nobody reacts to it. Like it acts like everybody's blind. It doesn't know it. Like there's a guy with the flare, like you'd be able to see him, but he goes and like flips over a table, cuts a man's head off with a knife, runs to a woman, breaks her neck. Like kicks a guy's head off, like he punches through a skull, and then later on, like he goes and grabs a guy in the back and just knees him in the back, and he's like bent in half. So like and then there's another point where he punches through a skull, but at the end of the movie, he goes hand to hand with two different guys, and like it seems like he can't do any of these things that he's done. Like it seems like they're equal strength by the end of the movie, even though he's literally destroyed human bodies with his bare hands prior. So like his strength is. Yeah, he literally punches a skull off, and then later on, like, he can barely fight Jigsaw, who's significantly smaller than him.
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense. Like, you think he would just be able to, like, punch through that guy's face.
I mean, it's just for the purposes of the plot.
He has steel plates in his face.
That's true. I mean, he had a steel plate.
Strategically placed.
Yeah, he could move it around.
You know what was weird? So, the guy who plays Soap, the cop who's kind of working with him, like, who's the head of the task force but knows who he is and kind of like gives him information. Yeah. That guy reminded me like he looks and sounds exactly like the guy who played the reporter in the 1989 Michael Keaton Batman, who like works with Kim Basinger. Like I thought they had to be related or something. It was weird. It really like threw me how much that guy looked like him.
I didn't feel the same.
It threw me. I thought he looked exactly like him. Other than that, like the action in this movie is over the top. I actually really liked Looney Bin Jim. It was an interesting character, a little weird.
I liked
the parkour guys.
I thought it added to the movie.
Yeah, I thought he was really good because he was like super smart and crazy.
What the hell was that?
The parkour guys. Well, the reason they put that in is her best friend said, "Don't put parkour guys in the movie. It's overdone since Casino Royale did it." So she put it in specifically to blow them up, which was kind of funny.
He blew him up.
A lot of the other characters in this movie were terrible actors, though. Like Julie Benz, who's in Dexter, she's in this. I think she's a terrible. Like she was awful. Dominic West was terrible in this movie. Most of the gangsters were like the acting in this movie was so bad. Like everybody was like, I know they tried to do a B movie, but when you try to do something poorly on purpose, like most people don't set out to do that. Like if you do it on purpose, it's really hard to do it earnestly. Like you gotta like commit to it and do it like it's real.
It seems shitty and lame.
Yeah, like what makes movies like Airplane and Naked Gun so great is Leslie Nielsen plays it straight. Like he plays it like he's playing a serious role, even though it's like these guys were like chewing the fat and just chewing up the scenery so much. And that's like it made it look cheap. But this movie, like I said earlier, like the colors were like vibrant and beautiful, and like it was dark and grim.
But that's all shit we could say about like fucking Batman Forever, you know? Like
and that's what's just weird about this movie.
Like it doesn't make it good. It makes it interesting to look at, which is fine.
Yeah.
Like that's something to say about a movie, but it doesn't make it a good movie.
Yeah,
I don't think this was a good movie.
Character tropes like that one cop who's literally stupid. Like Soap is stupid.
Like he should not be a cop. He shouldn't be a fucking bus driver, dude. Like he shouldn't do anything.
But then you have the agent that the Punisher killed, his partner comes and starts helping him out, and this stupid cop Soap keeps saying like you're not as stupid as you look, and he keeps calling him stupid. I was like, why is this guy stupid? Like I don't understand.
How are you in a position to call anyone else stupid? You're fucking stupid.
The other thing that I really liked about that, I hated the skull, like the Punisher logo. I didn't think it looked cool. I think it was kind of hokey. But this Punisher, I think, is the most kitted out Punisher. Like he's got the Kevlar that goes up over his neck a little bit.
He's like the Solid Snake or the Venom Snake with like the heavy armor.
Yeah,
He used
I
a lot
am
of
pain.
revolvers, which I thought
he
was
used a lot of different guns.
He
in this
was
movie.
heavily loaded out.
Yeah,
Like,
and,
in the beginning mission scene where you get to pick all your gear, he picked like everything every time.
Yeah, I did like.
It probably
At the end
cost
of the
him
movie,
like $40,000 every time
dollars
he
in GDP.
left the fucking base. Yeah.
When he
every
goes
time he went to
to
Micros.
Yeah.
right when he goes to like go to that like hotel where everyone's holed up and like the Jigsaw recruits like every gang, like so he recruits a black gang, an Asian gang, an Irish gang, and like they're all holed up in this one hotel. What I did like is Frank Castle just went in there and with no plan, he's just like, I'm gonna kill everybody in this building, and he just floor by floor clears it like the raid, right?
Yeah.
And it was a pretty cool action.
But again,
beat.
okay, cool. You compared it to the raid. What about the guy from the raid? What do you think? The raid guy's gonna get killed by this Frank Castle? I don't think so, dude.
I mean, I think there would be more of a fair fight.
I think
than
this would
John
be a
Wick
better
and
fight than John
Thomas
Wick
Jane.
versus Thomas Jane. Yeah.
What about raid guy versus this guy
Raid guy versus this guy?
versus
I think
Stevenson?
he would just rocket launcher him.
And well, not if he'd already
Wait.
used it. What if he was on one of the
Yeah.
upper floors?
Are
I
we
think
doing
this one-
guns versus fists?
Like
Or-
the
Well,
raid
'cause,
goes
when-
like
fists or
guns,
what?
then knives, then fists, right? Like I'm saying, fist
I think
to
it would be a
fist,
better
raid guy.
fight than the other ones that we've talked about.
What about
Like,
John Wick versus this guy? I'm still saying John Wick would have smoked this.
I think it would be a good fight though. I think it
Yeah.
would be like John Wick 2 Common versus John Wick. Like it was a good fight. I
Yeah.
think he would hold his own for a long time.
I think he would
John
still
Wick would be
fucking
hurt.
put a knife in Frank Castle's heart and tell him,
Yeah.
"I didn't kill you on purpose."
Yeah, I think John Wick would be hurt and probably stabbed a couple times.
Sure,
but
sure, John.
walk
That's
away.
part of his deal. He knows that's part of it.
He
you
gets
know?
beat up.
Yeah.
Can we talk
So again,
about
John
Carlos
Wick
and
again.
his
Another victory.
Oh, Carlos
for
was
John
the
Wick.
worst.
accent? Why did he have a fake accent? I don't get
It was so well, and that's
Who?
another thing that drove me crazy is he used to be a gangbanger, and
Yeah.
immediately like he's in Micro's house, and he like pulls a gun on this guy, and like clearly he's in Micro's house. Micro's cool with him, like maybe not do that, and then he leaves Carlos to watch over the wife and kid, and like he gets blindsided because he's playing around with the kid instead of keeping his guard up, dies immediately, and he's like, "I'll see you in
he
hell."
got mercied.
He got murked like crazy, and then I almost said Frank Castle walks up to him and he's like, "It's all right. You did the best you could." No, you didn't.
You didn't do the
You were
best
not
you
paying
could. You
attention.
could have done a lot better. You could have done a
You could-
fucking whole lot better.
You did nothing. Well, you know what doesn't make sense about that scene? I just realized this right now thinking about it. So there's a point when Jigsaw and Looney Big Jim are in a car driving. They're like, "Let's go kill Castle in his hole." And they're like, "No, we need to torment him first." But then they go to his lair. They don't know that he's not there. They go to his lair, and then it's Carlos like, wait a second. That didn't make any sense. And so they, leave an axe in him.
Yeah.
And Carlos goes, "Frank, I'll see you in hell." And then Frank goes, "If I see you anywhere near hell, I'm kicking your ass out." Like all of a sudden, he's super cool with this guy, and he's been calling him a gangbanger piece of shit the entire movie.
Well, now they're best friends.
Yeah, dude. Respect. Blood in, blood out.
Respect. I protect. You attack.
All right, so let's move into the last Punisher, John Barenthal, in the
series.
Netflix series. This just came out, so it's been out for 2 weeks. So we're gonna do some spoilers. If you're really
A lot
interested
of
in it and listening to this, you probably have already watched it. So, Dustin, you've said it multiple times. You think he's the best version. I agree. I think
I would
all
say
around-
Daredevil season 2, which I refer to as Punisher season 1, is the place to start if you
Yes.
want to see the Barenthal Punisher
Definitely.
punish some motherfuckers.
Can I just say this Punisher grunts way too much?
I actually disagree.
I don't think he
it's
grunts enough.
I think this Punisher is. I think his grunts are great. Yeah.
Constant. What
Dude,
the hell?
that's what
Dude,
war
he's
does
psych-
to a man.
He's an
dude.
animal at this point. He's lost his humanity, bro. I think
guess.
this Punisher is the Wolverine we've been missing.
I could see that.
Maybe. But I would say that this Punisher is very much the product of United States Marine Corps conditioning, training, right? To like overcome, adapt, like all that shit, survive, like whatever
Yeah.
it is he has to do to achieve his mission objective, he will do. And I think that portrayal on screen has not yet happened with any of
I
these
also
three.
think this is the most psychologically damaged one that we've seen as well.
Damage from so many other things.
Like
I feel like what makes this Punisher cool is like the damage begins from the war stuff, and it culminates with losing his family. But like all up until then, like his humanity has been systematically stripped away from him as a result of all of his military training. Like he's been losing himself for much longer. Like the crux of it is the murder of his family, and when he gets shot in the head, and they explain it like he's forced to relive that moment every second of his life.
Again. And the other thing that's interesting, but like, and this is the first one that we've seen that you actually see in his backstory, and they don't like show a ton of stuff from his past. It's all flashbacks, and every time he's asleep and every time he's knocked unconscious, he sees his wife and kids. And he's reliving it over and over and over again. This one, you actually see that he was a family man. And then in a few flashbacks, you see him taking his kids to, like, Coney Island and hanging out with Billy. And he was a good father. And this one makes so much more sense when you see that psychological break and why he would go to these extreme reactions. I definitely think this show is the best Marvel show we've had since Daredevil Season 1. I think Daredevil Season 1 is a fantastic season. It has, I definitely think all the Marvel Netflix shows should be maybe 10 episodes versus 13. Like there's definitely a couple filler episodes in all of them.
Yeah, I agree.
Or they can condense stuff. But I do think this was fantastic from beginning to end. I do think they could have shortened it a little bit, but I still think it was fantastic.
Well, I mean,
with the new...
So for me,
go ahead.
To begin with this series, I didn't think it was Punisher-y enough to begin with, but when I saw what they were doing, like developing the character, getting into his background, setting up everything, I thoroughly enjoyed it. But
I disagree that you said he didn't put, like, the first episode he kills like 4 construction workers. Every episode he kills somebody. I agree that maybe a little bit more, but I think if we went as far as what most people wanted, like reading online, like people are saying like, oh, there should have been more, and like every episode he should have been taken out like a mob family.
No.
I don't think that's the case, because like watching this season of Walking Dead, I've loved Walking Dead from season 1 until even last season, when a lot of people I know, like Dustin, you stopped watching Walking Dead last season, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. This season, I'm like 4 episodes behind, because it's literally been every episode is just action, 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 action. Kill this person, kill this person, kill this person. And it's just like, it gets exhausting and it's no longer interesting anymore. So I do think you need to have those like, that roller coaster, your ups and your downs, but because then it gets old and weird. So I think this show had enough action throughout. I think spread out that it kept me interested.
I think it further reinforces being true to this character, to where he is setting a mission. Like there are mission parameters for Frank Castle, right? To where it's not like, oh, every day I got to go murder somebody. It's like, no, I need to find out who is responsible for this wrong that has been done.
Yeah.
And there are going to be days where that doesn't mean killing someone. Like there are days where that means doing some detective work or, investigating a situation or reaching out to
my favorite Punisher stories, and I feel I thought they might touch on this in this series, that one of my favorite Punisher stories is he goes after there's a cab driver who's killing people. There's a serial killer who's a cab driver. There's a serial killer that's killing cab drivers. So in the comic book, he becomes a cab driver and is just waiting to finally pick up the person who's doing that. So he got his like cab like kitted out with like a shotgun under the seat pointing straight up and stuff like that. And there's a soldier in this season who goes crazy and becomes a terrorist, and they mentioned that he's a cab driver. So I thought they were actually going to do this storyline a little bit. So, there are some, comic book elements, but I've been saying for since 2004 Punisher movie with Thomas Jane, that for a long time, especially once I saw Dexter, I really want Punisher to be a TV show, and each season he maybe takes out a different like mob family, working his way up to the Kingpin kind of thing is what I've always wanted. So, this season it was like a military thing. So next season I'd love to see him take out, one mob family, and then like season 3 a different mob family kind of thing, and building up to like the Kingpin or like Hammerhead or something like that.
Well, I think they're going to continue with Billy. I mean, because It took me
'cause
forever
he's
to
gonna be
connect the
Jigsaw.
dots. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I felt so stupid when I figured it out, but I was
Billy
I was
Russo.
like,
They said it 1,000 times, bro.
I know. But it's whatever. I know. I felt really stupid when I said that.
Well, you know what? Honestly, though, I get where you're coming from because I did have a major problem with this season. I don't like the fact that they took his background and changed it from the mob being responsible for his family's murder to the military/American government. I actually had a huge problem with that because that fundamentally changes who the character is. And the other problem I have with it is based off his actions in Daredevil season 2 or, Punisher, season 1, if you really like Dustin said, he is a vigilante who's murdering people. He is breaking the law constantly. And he's got these soldiers who are coming at him who think he's a terrorist, like a homeland, a homeland terrorist. And he's killing soldiers just doing their jobs. I had a huge problem with that, actually.
Well, I mean, I think they kind of get to that point when he's like infiltrating that military base, and he's like, what if one of these soldiers like draws down on me or whatever? Like, am I supposed to like kill a guy for just doing his job? And he doesn't. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and that's the only time. But later, like in the episode prior when he goes to get Gunner, those guys think he's a terrorist. Like they're in their mind, they're getting a terrorist.
I guess what I did appreciate about this season, especially with our current political climate, is what is the difference between the United States government and organized crime?
Yeah,
what is the real difference? Like what? But they killed his family. It doesn't matter who it is. They're they're the organized crime that gets to hide behind, what is legally correct or whatever. Like he's a vigilante. He has bucked the system. The system is
to an extent I agree, but the problem is the difference between the mafia is people who are in the mafia know they're in the mafia and they know they're doing illegal things. In this particular case, they are sending soldiers. Like Billy that gets broken up about it and sending their guys.
They go to it, man. They all knew they were doing. Like his whole unit knew they were doing when they were torturing people and murdering people. Like they all knew they were doing illegal things.
That I agree. You're right.
But
they were told, it's for the greater good. They were told, hey, this is off books, but they didn't. He didn't know it was for heroin. Like he thought that it was still for the greater good.
Yeah.
So Frank has always been about the greater good.
That's the arc of the character. That's learning that this thing that I had pledged my life to has done some fucked up shit and used me as a tool to do it.
And that is the theme for the episode or the whole series. But my problem is specifically once he gets to the point where he's like, I'm gonna go kill Russo and I'm gonna kill Rollins. They're still sending just regular guys who, as far as they know, they're going after a terrorist, doing their jobs, and he's killing
Anvil guys.
They're all Anvil guys,
they're
but
all
they're
private military contractors.
But still, they're still
mercs.
That, and
they're mercs, dude. Those are mercs.
But they still, as far as they know, they're doing the right thing. Those guys still think. Some of them think that they're going after a terrorist. They're not all. There's very few of them that were actually wrapped up in Billy's plan.
I still respect it. It's like, dude, I mean, like, mercs are different than straight up military guys, right? Like, these are guys, they get paid different. Like, they get...
That's true, but they still think that they're doing the right thing.
So whatever, if my dad is the fucking dude running the mafia and he tells me to go do some stuff, I think I'm doing the right thing.
But you know you're part of the mafia.
Well,
like, you're still technically doing
they're part of a private military like in 2017, if you decide to join a private military contractor, you know what that is. You know that's not for good necessarily. That's for what's paying you.
Yeah,
like there's that.
I get it.
That conscience
it's a gray area.
Present. It is a gray area for sure, and like. I think for the character that they represent, like he's not killing indiscriminately. Like these guys are sent to murder him, and
that's
so what?
True.
Am I supposed to let you kill me? Like fuck you! Like no way! I'm gonna let you kill me because I know you're too stupid to know what you're doing. No, that's not the Punisher at all. That's not true to the character either.
Yeah. Right. So because we're running a little short on time, what are your guys' highlights of the season?
My highlight of the season is I felt like, and I was texting you about it because I was a little bit ahead of you in watching it, right?
Yeah, you were a couple episodes. You finished
I was texting
a week
you,
ahead
and
of
it
me.
got to that low point, and then probably around episode 10, 11, when the punishment kicks in, like where they've got him chained to that chair, right? And they're just that dude's wailing. Well, what's his name? Rollins is wailing on him. Like, finally, when Russo cuts the zip tie enough to where he knows Frank is gonna get free, and lets him get on top of him and get his thumb in his eyes and just have his way. Like, that is when like the punishment really happens in the season. Spoilers, everyone. Rollins gets his ass punished hella hard. But I liked that it wasn't this kind of murder spree. It wasn't like, oh god, the bodies are stacking up. It was like, no. This man gets punished.
Right. Yeah. Double D, what are your highlights?
There's a couple that come to mind. So in the not the very beginning, but early in the show, he snipes someone from across the border. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah,
that was cool. The first episode. That was like the first 10 minutes of the series.
Very early. So very early.
Yeah, very, very, very.
That was literally the opening scene.
And then in their cave when he's killing all those guys that Billy came after, or that Billy sent after him, but Billy's not there, and he's all like in a primal rage, yelling Billy's name the entire time.
Yeah, I wrote that down.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
I also really liked when they showed that Rollins was going to send them on that mission that was basically suicide. And he had like a huge problem with it, and then they sent him anyway. And then when they came back after Frank had basically saved them all, and like punched his eye out, that was hella cool. Yeah, I was really sad that Billy pulled him off of him. That would have ended the whole season.
Yeah, to like continue with like what Double D was saying, like in that scene, like he and Micro set a trap for them to come to the base, right? So he's like painted black. He's got his Punisher stuff like set up. And he's like hiding, and he sets up, like
all the bombs,
gunpowder and the light bulbs, and sets up ropes to like strangle people and stuff like that. And like he starts doing the grunting, and he's going like berserker, like Wolverine berserker, and he's killing all of them. And he's just like, Billy, where, Billy?
He slices
and
that guy's leg.
He starts
open.
like he kits them all to the point where they're all mortally like they're all gonna die, but some of them are still kind of like crawling around. And he walks up to one like, "Where's Billy? I don't know. He's not coming." Bam, kills him, and then goes to the next one.
Yep.
Where's Billy? I don't know.
Fair
Bam!
enough.
And he just keeps killing them all. Like, so that was cool. I think one of my highlights was I think episode 3 when they're doing the flashback to him in Afghanistan, Iraq, or wherever he is, and they're trying to. This is like the suicide mission, and they're trying to like clear out a bunker, and he's just like, "I got this," and he goes and systematically like he kills like 20-30 guys, and then it gets to the point where he's like out of ammo, and he just like starts beating the shit out of a guy, and you just see him, and he's covered in blood, and he's just gone feral. Like I've said, like that's something that we've never really even seen in the X-Men movies with Wolverine. Like you've never really seen him go full on berserk feral, where he doesn't seem human anymore.
There's that.
You get that a couple times in this series. Like you see him just same thing like in the prison scene in Daredevil season 2.
Yep.
Like he is not a man; he's an animal. Yeah.
Well, you get it too when they find the knife in the kid's backpack or whatever, and like he
puts it up against his throat.
Wife lets him like talk to him about it,
and
he's like, if you had a gun cocked and loaded and I had this knife, I'd still rather be me.
Yeah,
I can close that gap.
I can close that
distance.
Yeah,
you could miss
like,
a fraction of an angle off. You can miss the shot. I'm not gonna miss this knife.
But it was also kind of like at that moment, you're like, this guy can't be a father anymore. Like he's ruined. Like,
well, the thing that's funny, and the whole time
you teach a child not to bring a knife to anywhere is by holding a knife to their
saying
throat.
It's better than a gun. So what's really funny is I was texting this to Dustin throughout. So there's a point where Micro contacts Frank and is like, hey, we need to work together, and Frank's like not about that. Like he doesn't want anyone to know who he is, so he like tricks Micro. He figures out who he is, figures out who his family is, so he goes to the family's house, and Micro's got the house bugged and got cameras everywhere, and he like befriends the wife and the kids, and it's kind of like you think that like the wife's definitely interested. And I kept telling Dustin like I really want him to just like, before him and Micro were friends, just like plow his wife and just like look at the camera and wink, something along those lines. And it didn't happen. Like it makes sense.
I'm glad
that it
didn't
happen.
happen. That'd be terrible. That would make you hate him And also that's not what he's about, dude. Like,
no, it's not. Like, this is the first Punisher. Like this one's he's a jerk. Like, he's still even at the end of the movie. Like, he's still a jerk. But you know, he's got what he is. I kind of thought the ending was weak, when he's like now part of like a support group, and everybody knows that he's there, but they're not going to say that he's in the support group. I thought it was kind of anticlimactic. I think that I really wish it should have just ended with him letting like the bad guy or the good guys from like Homeland Security, like, we've expunged your record. You know, everyone thinks Frank Castle is at large, but you can be Peter Castiglione. I think it should have just ended there and left it ambiguous as to what he's gonna do. Yeah. But overall, I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was really fun. The action was great.
I think it made a good like distinction between like when there are people like, I guess what I liked about this Punisher is when there's a cause for this Punisher, then he will be punishing, right?
If not, he wants to lay low.
It's not like this constant kind of like the Dolph Lundgren one was like 100 and whatever people in however many years. Like, I feel like this Punisher will like rest for periods, you know, and kind of only show himself when needed.
Right.
Do you get what I'm saying? Like,
no, I get exactly what you're saying. He's got to feel a need. Like, he's got to hear the call. It's almost like there's got to be a bat signal in the sky.
It's a mission. Yeah. It's mission focused. For like, it was very military and very like part of I guess like being part of that support group was like, that does make sense to me. That's a thing that a Frank Castle would do. You know, like the other side of that punishment coin is maybe the redemption or helping other veterans to like have a better life. You like a life he can never have. That's not the
Punisher, but like I get it in the more grounded, realistic world that he would maybe do
like
that.
That would feel like good work to him. Like the same work as punishing the bad guys would be helping these guys live.
I guess I've never really seen the Punisher as a heroic person. Like he'll go out of his way to not hurt innocent people and, you know, save them if like he happens to go and fight the mob and they grab like an innocent person. He's going to do everything he can to make sure that person comes out alive.
Of course.
I did appreciate the fact that veteran Lewis, who went crazy and like killed people and then became a terrorist, that he's just like, I need to take this person. Like he completely gave up his other mission to go take on this mission. So I did like that aspect, that he's here's somebody doing something wrong and I can take him out. I'm going to go do it.
I agree that it's...
go
ahead, David.
I also like that he got mad at everybody that was telling him not to kill him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I overall, once again, like I thought this was fantastic. I had a few minor issues with it, but I definitely think it was better than Iron Fist. I liked it better than Luke Cage. I love Jessica Jones, and I think I liked this over Jessica Jones. I think it was better than Daredevil season 2 on the whole, minus the Punisher parts, because the Punisher parts in Daredevil season 2 were fantastic.
Oh yeah.
But overall, I mean, I'm glad this happened. I've been wanting this for the better part of 13 years, for the Punisher to be an episodic serial thing where you can really get into the character and learn why he's doing that and just systematically take down one organization. And I think they did a great job, and I'm really interested to see what they do in the inevitable season 2.
Oh yeah. And I think also, I mean, we didn't really touch on it yet with Barenthal, but just the look. Like,
oh, he was fantastic. Like having the military style haircut, and there's actually a lot of different Punisher images that I've seen that he kind of looks like and resembles.
Yeah, I mean, I think he and Dolph have the most. Maybe it's just like having like that broad nose. I don't know. Like,
I think it's the nose. I think that's what it is.
Not being like conventionally nose. Like attractive in any way. You know, like I don't know. They just look like regular type dudes. That could. I think
Marines. This was definitely most. Yeah, he looked like a soldier. He had he was in really good shape. Like he was like not ripped. Like Thomas Jane had like a 6-pack that looked like a person who was trying to get a 6-pack and look.
No,
awesome.
This guy looks like
Thomas Jane looked functional,
strong enough to.
Or not Thomas Jane.
He's not pretty strong.
John Barenthal looked like he. Had like he didn't have a 6-pack. He had like a solid 4-pack and big. Like he looks like somebody who's muscular because his body is a weapon.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I mean, we're just going to keep gushing. I thought it was a fantastic representation of it. I'm really interested to see where it goes, and I think it's a high mark for Marvel television.
Absolutely agreed.
I agree as well.
Yep, perfect. So Thank you guys for listening. You can check out everything that's MDXpods related at MDXpods.com, on Twitter and Instagram at MDXpods. Also check us out on Patreon.com if you want to hear episodes early. It's Patreon.com/MDXpods. We've got a bunch of rewards. We're shipping out all the rewards. A lot of it's gone out already. Anybody who signed up in November will be getting the rewards in the next week or two. So thank you for everybody who's helped us out. Thank you for listening. And that's it. Have a great day, guys. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Feliz Navidad.